Today we are talking prize money, Mr. Olympia prize money, to be more precise. You can see that big check about to be handed to Samson Dauda, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a record amount, $600,000. But of course, it was not always that much. Now, if you rewind back to the very first ever Mr. Olympia event, it was won by none other than Larry Scott. He received $1,000 for a cash prize, and you can see the little equals mark, and I put $10,000. That would be inflation included. So he did receive 1,000, but in today's standards, he received $10,000. Now move on to 1966, and it remained $1,000. In fact, 1967, which would be Sergio Oliva's first ever title, 68, it remained 1,000, 69, all the way to 1970, which was Arnold Schwarzenegger's first ever Olympia title, and it was still $1,000. In fact, by 1971, it hadn't changed at all. But of course, as you know, inflation included, it was well below $10,000, which Larry Scott would have taken home, I guess, in today's standards. Arnold Schwarzenegger was at the time the lowest paid Mr. Olympia champion, inflation included, of course. Now, 1972, they rectified the pay. They gave him $2,000. Arnold Schwarzenegger received $2,000, which was quite a jump, which would be $15,000 in today's standards. So at the time, he was the lowest, and then by 72, by that time, he was the very highest paid Mr. Olympia champion. And then it all went down in 1973. Arnold received a record $750. $750. Now, I can't find any footage of it or even any pictures of it, but apparently Arnold, upon receiving the very low pay, prize money of $750, he got upset and he screamed and hollered on the microphone and I guess pounded his fist on the podium. So that would have been very interesting to see. 1974, Arnold Schwarzenegger receives $1,000 for a cash prize. By 75, they had more than doubled it. This was the pumping iron year, of course. Arnold received $2,500. 1976, the prize money was doubled as Franco Columbo received $5,000. 1977, Frank Zane receives $5,000, and food for thought here on this one, there was $13,000 total cash prize. Now by 1978, the Mr. Olympia cash prize was up to 15 grand, which was of course a record at the time. Inflation included, it was $73,000. So that was a nice little chunk of change for sure for Frank Zane to receive. 1979, the purse was up to $25,000, and it remained so until they changed it in 1984. We will get to that in just a second. But for several years, it was $25,000. Frank Zane received his last first place trophy, first place check, I should say, in 1979. And the strange thing is, now that they increased the money to $25,000, Arnold Schwarzenegger decides to pick now to return in 1980 to receive that big check. And then, equally as funny, to me anyway, Franco Columbo does the exact same thing in 1981. And I never really thought of this before, but perhaps they came back to get the big check. Because up until now, obviously Arnold, the lowest paid Mr. Olympia champion in 1973, and Franco Columbo, he made $5 grand in 1976. So now they get some money. I just think that is an interesting situation. 1982, Chris Dickerson receives $25,000, like I said. And ditto with 1983's champion, Samir Banu, another $25,000. Now, it's important to note at this time, 1983, the total prize money was up to $50,000, which was, of course, a record for the Olympia at the time. But as the old saying goes, records were made to be broken, and by 1984, Lee Haney had received $50,000 for winning the Mr. Olympia event, with a total prize money of $100,000. So there was a huge increase from 83 to 84. 1985, it remained a $50,000 top prize for the winner. The following year, they bumped it up $5,000. So in 1986, it was $55,000 to the winner. 87, it remained the same, and it was a top prize of $120,000 by now. 1988, Lee Haney receives a huge bonus. He receives $75,000. Wow, with a $150,000 total prize money. And if you're paying attention to the numbers up top, Lee Haney's $75,000 would equate to over $200,000 for today's standards. So they were starting to make some money, and rightfully so. Following year, the top prize remained the same. Of course, with inflation included, the top prize in today's standards was now just under $200,000. And it's interesting to see how much inflation is affected year after year. The following year, 1990, the Mr. Olympia event handed out $100,000 to the winner. And this was a huge achievement for the world of bodybuilding. And if you are keeping count, which I am, in case you're not, inflation included, this milestone was extra special because Lee Haney, for today's standards, all of his prize money added up, that's just over $1 million. So Lee Haney, kind of the first millionaire made just from winning bodybuilding competitions. And without inflation, Lee Haney still earned $460,000 if you add up all of his prize money. 1991, Lee Haney's final Olympia win. He earned $100,000, bumping him up to $560,000 total prize money. Wow, the richest man in bodybuilding, at that time anyway. 1992, a new year, a new champion, and the same prize money. In fact, 93 it was the same, 94 it remained the same, so that's from 1990 all the way to 1994, remaining $100,000. Of course, guys, inflation, that counts too. So you gotta give them a raise from time to time, and they did so. In 1995, Dorian Yates received another $10,000, bumping him up to $110,000. And then it was a record-breaking stalemate for the Olympia. 96, 97, 1998, still $110,000 for the brand new champion, Ronnie King Coleman. 99. By 2000, it was still the same. 2001, it was still $110,000. Something had to give, but it was not the prize money. 2002, it remained $110,000, but they gave the winner, Ronnie Coleman, a brand new Cadillac Escalade for his efforts. Now, like myself, you probably figured that they raised the prize money in 2003, what with the production and all. But it remained $110,000. That is 9 years in a row, which is a record of being the same prize money. They did, however, give Ronnie Coleman another Cadillac. 2004, it was bumped up, finally. First time in many years. $120,000 goes to the winner. 2005, they continued the trend. $150,000 goes to Ronnie the King Coleman. Now, I always thought this was kind of a funny picture. You see, The three people that came out to hand the awards, they came out to a bent over Ronnie Coleman. So he was very exposed, and you can see the gentleman and the blonde girl, they're kind of looking the other way, and Jay's just, oh no, he does that all the time. So it's kind of awkward for them, and probably somewhat funny for Jay Cutler. But all jokes aside, if you take the $150,000, inflation included, that's $246,000, and that's just a little bit more than Lee Haney would have won in 1990. So this is a record, the most any Olympia champions ever won. 2006, it was Jay Cutler getting the record-breaking $155,000. And Coleman, who placed second, he did earn $91,000, but focused just on the money that he earned winning the Olympia title, that puts him at $930,000. That is so close to winning $1 million. And of course, with the addition of his other wins, second place here, that puts him well over $1 million. But based on the Olympia wins alone, that is close. And inflation included, that puts him well over $1 million. 2007, Jay Cutler receives another $155,000. Same thing goes with 2008. It remained $155,000. This time, the top prize going to Dexter the Blade Jackson. 2009, Jay Cutler receives a nice little bonus. The top prize was up to $200,000. Now that is absolutely a milestone. 2010, it remained the same, which of course Jay Cutler received. 2011, it stayed the same, so Phil the Gift Heath, his very first ever Olympia, there was no bonus. 2012, he received a bonus. It was up to $250,000. 2013, the top prize remained the same, $250,000. 2014, it was bumped up to $275,000, which went to Phil Heath along with a golden Sandow, worth to mention there. The following year, 2015, Phil Heath would receive the biggest increase in Olympia history. The top prize was now up to $400,000. And it remained that way throughout the rest of Phil Heath's winning career, earning his last victory in 2017. So, of course, he did not win as many titles as Ronnie Coleman, but considering he won a whole lot more money at the end of his career, up to $400,000. Does that make Phil Heath the very first ever millionaire, just counting Olympia victories alone? Well, that puts him well over $2 million of prize money, and that has nothing to do with inflation. That is the actual money that Phil Heath received. But then you get into the taxes, and that's just a headache. 2018, we see Sean Roden taking home that $400,000. And it actually remained the same for all of the one-time champions. Brandon Curry, of course, Big Ramy captured the title twice, so he was a little bit of a different case than all of the other one-time champions. Of course, it was still $400,000. Hattie Shupin receives the same thing, and ditto with Derek Lunsford in 2023. It was not until last year that the IFBB raised the prize money, the first place prize money, up to $600,000. Are you kidding me? And the total prize money is now up to $1.6 million. That is unbelievable. And that will about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Little bit of a think piece, I have to say. A lot of information to take in. Of course, Samson Dauda, he received more money from one competition than anybody else. And if you add it all up, Phil Heath actually received more money by winning the Olympia than anybody else in the history of bodybuilding. So, well over $2 million. And I guess Arnold Schwarzenegger, he has a record as well, winning the least amount of anybody for one Olympia, $750. $750. Wow. I think he made up for it, though, in the movies. So let me know if you enjoyed this one. Would you like to see more videos like this one? Maybe a little bit more boring to some, but very informative nonetheless. Hit thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. That always helps. Have a nice one.